Hello, FlyQuest. This is Sam Shepard, and I'm going to be reviewing the RNG and G2 Esports Best of 5 series for the quarterfinals of Worlds that's going on right now. So, a little bit about these analyses. I'm going to be going through champ select for each game and explaining essentially why these teams are prioritizing the picks that they do. What that means for what their team comp is going to be, and basically what they're going to be trying to play around the map, as well as kind of seeing how the differences of styles between these two teams actually gives G2 a really good matchup for the games specifically that they win and some of the games that they do end up losing. So I'm going to be going through champ select in like real time, just kind of explaining what what the bans and what the champions are doing for each of these teams based on what we have seen them play previously in the group stages and for G2 and play-ins as well. So going through, to start out, we have a Heimerdinger ban. That's the respect ban for Hjarnan in bot lane. That's one of his most comfortable champions. He hasn't lost in professional play on it yet. And they're also going to be banning the Akali, which is a flex pick that G2 likes to use between Wonder and Perks. And then the Tahm Kench third, which is Wadid's probably best champion, and the best champion in theory to neutralize the bot lane pressure that Uzi and Ming are going to be trying to have in this game. And so G2's bans of Xayah and Alistar right now essentially are trying to neutralize the impact of Uzi and Ming. Alistar is a super strong champion, both for hard engaging and for lane presence, as well as the Thresh now that they banned third. And the Xayah is probably one of the best pushing ADs early on that gives that would give a significant advantage for Uzi to have. So the featured matchup that we're going to be seeing in top lane, at least for this game, is one that's very familiar for the rest of Worlds that we've seen, is that the Urgot versus the Aatrox matchup. This is, I think, is considered a skill matchup based on how good you are. And it kind of can go either way depending on which player is able to gain an advantage in the early levels. I think that the Urgot just naturally will outpush the Aatrox in top lane, so I think that they have a slight edge in top lane pressure. So the response from G2 is to go to the Aatrox and the Rakan, so I'm just going to stop in the first wave right here to explain the rest of this. So the Rakan gives really good engage outside of lane and inside of lane when you're trying to set up jungle ganks. He is a bit squishy. He is a bit on the squishier side, so they do kind of lose a little bit of the beefiness in bot lane by taking the Rakan. I don't think it's that bad of a pick when you're considering how G2 wants to play a more 1-3-1 centric style where they can punish and try to get picks across the map whenever they see RNG at a position. So I like that pick. And then RNG responds with the Talia for jungle and the Leona as a counter pick for the Rakan in bot lane. Leona is really good at going in, and she just has natural abilities that counter Rakan's engage with his knockup, like the Zenith Blade. I believe that's how that interaction works. And the Talia just gives Karsa super good jungle priority in terms of how quickly he can clear and how quickly he can get around the map with Talia's passive. Plus all of the ability to affect the different lanes with her ultimate. This is kind of similar to Nocturne in terms of how it's semi-global, and the pressure that Karsa can put on all three of the lanes now shows that they're going to be trying to get some early to mid-game focus on their jungler to try to get pressure across the map. And so Perks, seeing as they do not pick a mid laner, I think that they try to take the rise away from Xiaohu, as well as gives Perks a theoretically winning matchup based on what their phase 2 bans are going to be. So just looking at the first round of pick ban that's going on right here, there's a disparity in jungle for G2. They did not pick a jungler in this first round, so realistically RNG is going to want to ban two of the stronger junglers, probably Nocturne, Xin Zhao, maybe Olaf, but realistically the Nocturne and the Xin Zhao are the two that they're going to be looking for. And then on G2's side, they should be banning mid laners out that are bad matchups for the Rise, so naturally that's going to be Syndra because of her really strong laning phase, and probably another aggressive pick like Aurelia, or I guess the Urgot could actually be flexed to mid lane. That's the advantage of the Urgot pick. So yeah, there's the Aurelia phase 2 ban. Aurelia is a pretty slippery champion for Rise to have to deal with. So, and her split pushing will probably outsplit push a Ryze come mid game when they try to break up. So they're trying to ban out counters to their own 1v1 strategy. So Nocturne is also the second ban down here. This is expected, like I said before. Nocturne and probably Xin Zhao are two of the strongest champions in jungle that go along with Talia right now in the current meta. So, and then the Syndra ban is banned out as well. So yeah, these bans are going exactly as I expected them to go, where they want to give Perks and Wonder an advantageous laning phase where they're able to build their own natural CS leads and then pressure leads based on how quickly they can actually push. The Xin Zhao is banned out second. So now G2 has the option to either pick a jungler or an AD. Realistically, I think they're going to want to pick a jungler because they're going to save their AD pick to try to counterpick Uzi, just to give another chance for G2's bot lane to neutralize the pressure that Uzi will have naturally in the lane. And so they do pick the Gragas. I'd say that's probably the next on the tier list. It gives really good engage between the Rakan and the Gragas now for G2. So anytime they are able to move to a side lane and try to help their split pushers, they can find picks through any kind of vision advantage they have. And I like the Lucian pick from Uzi. It gives a lot of laning pressure now to Hjarnan and Wadid. It's a really easy champion to gain an early CS lead on the spot lane, who I think is significantly weaker than RNG's. And then the Scion pick is going to be the last pick for Xiaohu in mid lane. So the thing that they can actually do is flex the Urgot and the Scion depending on the matchup. They want to keep the Urgot in the top lane because it goes more even with Aatrox than the Scion would, because Aatrox is much more of a tank bully than anything else. And it also gives Perks a pretty advantageous lane in mid lane, because the natural range versus melee matchup will give him the ability to probably pressure out Xiaohu. I think the lane pushing early on should be slightly Ryze favorite, I would say, but once Scion gets a few items and once he gets a little bit tankier, it's going to be pretty even. So essentially there's a huge dynamic change in how these two teams want to play. It's very clear that RNG wants to be bot lane focused in this draft, and they want to be creating pressure with the Talia. The ultimate from Talia can help sway and pressure people off of the bot lane tower. So realistically, RNG is going to want to have first tower advantage for Uzi, and then transition him to top lane, where he can take that tower, and then transition them to mid lane after these two outer towers in top and mid are gone. So we'll start and see. The big thing between these two teams, though, is how different their styles are, where G2 has a huge focus on getting advantageous lanes, matchups, and split push pressure from Perks and Wonder with their two picks. And the Aatrox and the Ryze are both very strong split pushers, and they can create a lot of pressure on the side lane. Plus, going double TP allows them to move from the side lanes to a Baron or to a Dragon fight if they need to. So as we're going through here, the early items that would have the most impact, I believe, in this would be the early Predator boots that Gragas will have after his first clear. It looks like he's probably going to be starting topside, so he can, depending on what kind of information G2 spot on Karsa and whatever his early jungle path would be, this would allow Gragas to do a full topside clear, maybe getting the scuttle as well, and then backing for early Predator boots to be able to influence the other lanes. I think G2's focus should be in the bot lane to begin with in the early game, simply because of how strong Uzi and Ming's 2v2 of Lucian Leona is. That lane should create a ton of pressure for Jhin since he's so immobile. He's going to have to focus a lot on dodging the Zenith Blades from Leona and keeping him alive, essentially, because this 2v2 lane is super potent and strong. So the way that we'll see this game go through right now is that Uzi starts W on Lucian. I think this is a newer development in how you play Lucian bot lane. Because normally a lot of people would think that you start Q on him to get better lane pressure, but it looks like it's the poke damage and the ability to move in with the movement speed off of the W to be able to push him in. And so Karsa actually does a red buff to Scuttle Clear, so that gives him priority on bot lane Scuttle to be able to push in. He is spotted on a ward. Perks does walk up right here. And so this flash for flash trade right here actually ensures that Karsa will have more pressure to be able to gank mid lane in any future skirmishes that are going on. And so in bot lane, the bot lane for RNG gets a level 2 push simply because they have a faster ability to get level 2 because of all the pressure they have in lane, and they're able to zone off Hjarnan and Wooddeed from the lane as well. So as we can see as well, just from the summoners, Wooddeed has Cleanse as his secondary, and he does not have the spell book, which means he is going to be sticking with the Cleanse and no Ignite. So realistically, it's a very defensive look. It seems that the game plan from RNG or from G2 is essentially to, stem the bleeding away from bot lane and basically just try to stay alive as long as possible, and don't give Uzi any huge advantages and don't let him get a kill in the 2v2 lane. So that's naturally going to release a lot of pressure on them, but at the same time they're going to be losing out on a lot of CS just naturally because Jhin does not farm as well as the Lucian can early on, especially when he's pressured off the wave as much as he is. So right now, the Gragas did do the full clear top side. He did not do the Scuttle, though, so he's going to Predator down bot lane with his early Predator boots, and they're going to go on this Leona and end up resulting in a kill. They burn Ming's Flash as well, and they force out, I believe it's Sion's TP. Yes, they do. So he does complete the TP. Uzi does actually almost trade back a kill here, so they burn Hjarnan's heal as well, and Jankos' flash. So it's actually not a terrible turnaround. Uzi still has a ton of lane pressure in terms of CS, but Hjarnan does pick up first blood, so that gives him a little bit of gold back for all of the minions that he's missing in lane. The biggest thing, though, from that gank is that Karsa is now enabled to steal away the blue buff, giving him a 3 buff lead onto the Gragas. So the thing I like about what G2's game plan is right here is they try to shut down Uzi and Ming as much as possible. They're trying to put him far behind since the Lucian is a lot less forgiving when he is behind as opposed to a more traditional AD carry. But in the end, Uzi still has about like a 16 CS lead going into this. And because they were able to back off of that play, Ming is able to roam up to mid lane and get some pressure off while Uzi still walks back to base. So there's no harm, no foul in sending 3 mid there, especially since Perks' flash is down. It's a good pressure, good way to force him off the wave and let Sion get priority to be able to base for his first base. And so this is something that I want to talk about as well, an interesting development for bot lane in general with heavy mana spellcasters like Lucian and Sivir. This is something that I've seen Uzi do a lot, and I think a lot of other ADs are also going to start copying this as well, is the single fairy charm that we see here in his inventory. I really like this idea. It basically kind of gives a little bit of extra mana sustain to Lucian's really mana hungry early game if he's constantly harassing people in lane, and then it also sells back for a decent amount. It's kind of like the similar approach to using refillable and then being able to sell it later at a good amount of gold. So I like that development. I think it's a really interesting adaptation to help Lucian just in general and Sivir stay in lane longer because they don't run out of mana as much. So that also will just naturally be able to give him an advantage here. So Jankos is looking bottom again to try to keep putting this Lucian behind. And I really like how much focus they're putting on this bot lane, because it's very clear that Hjarnan and Wooddeed are just going to straight 2v2 lose this team fight if they are left alone, and they are still bleeding a heavy CS lead, basically about 20. It's going to get up to I think about 30 or so as the lane goes on. So that's just a huge advantage that they're putting into Uzi, and it's very clear that they're focusing a lot of their time into bot lane to actually be shutting it down. So Jankos is looking for a lane gank here. Wooddeed jumps in, and Hjarnan actually ends up blowing his own flash in the defensive, even though they were against, on their side, they had the Gragas coming in. I guess that just plays into the fact that they don't know where Karsa is currently, and the potential of a turnaround gank with the Leona plus Karsa's damage early would have actually probably gotten him killed. So it's not a terrible flash. It just kind of sucks that he ends up having to blow it when they're trying to make a proactive play here. And so, again, they push in the lane. They're trying to get lane pressure on Uzi so that they can recall. And they see that Karsa is now down here with 6. So Karsa is basically going to be looking now to constantly pressure with his ultimate when it's up to try to get Uzi First Blood Tower Gold. And that's essentially how RNG is going to be winning this game, is getting First Blood Tower Gold onto Uzi so that he gets the plus 600 to snowball his lead even more against Hjarnan right now. And then send him top lane after that is done, where they can have lane pressure for Rift Herald, where they're just chipping away the top tower. And then once they get the Rift Herald, they should be trying to put it in mid lane, just to be able to open up all 3 outer towers for G2. And so what G2 can do is they need Jankos to, once his flash gets back up, which is very soon, they need him to be able to impact probably bot lane again before they lose the tower blood, or they need to have a 4-man gank with the Ryze as well going down bot lane. I think that's, now that Ryze has Swifty boots plus his tier and a lot of extra mana and health, I think he'll be able to constantly shove out the wave. He won't do as much damage, but the EW from Ryze's utility will give them a lot of chance to kill Uzi in their roam, potentially down bot lane. So now we see that, just looking at the items across the board, G2 is close to finishing the jungle item for Gragas. Jhin is still super far behind in terms of getting his Stormrazor. And this is an interesting macro note that G2 does right now, which is sending Perks up in top lane and sending the Aatrox down to the mid lane against the Scion. Because Perks has his TP right now, so they're going to look to collapse, maybe get a dragon fight afterwards, but they ended up switching back so that Perks could actually get the blue buff, which probably is not the best use of his TP. They did have an ability since they could have been more proactive with that 1 TP from Perks and having Aatrox in mid lane without his. They could have the potential to try to 5v4 that and then maybe get a Cloud Drake off the back of it, but Scion just flashes out of the way and they don't actually get anything out of it. So they just kind of use Perks' TP for nothing, essentially, which kind of sucks, but it's not a huge deal. So Karsa gets a huge chunk off onto Wadid here. He's going to end up ulting behind them to just put pressure on them. This is all just pressure to try to get the first tower for RNG and Uzi. And you even have Xiaohu roaming down here to try to influence this. So it is a 4v4 eventually now that Jankos comes down, but they are just trying to constantly chip. And Karsa actually almost dies for doing that. So he was taking a few extra tower shots. Perks uses his ultimate as a method to zone them off, but now that he doesn't have his ultimate, this is an even bigger go button for Uzi to want to push up to this tower now that he knows Ryze has no TP and no ultimate to walk forward. And this is all just a huge race to get this first tower gold, because Aatrox is in no threat range of pushing in on the Urgot. The Urgot's been able to keep him pushed in constantly, very even in CS. Perks is the only one currently who has a huge lead, 110 to 81. Like I was saying before, that lane is the biggest advantage for G2 in this game specifically. Just seeing as Ryze will naturally be able to push in and bully out this Scion from being able to get CS. But the Scion pick is more of a team-wide utility than a laning presence, so it's naturally going to happen like that. And again, we see Perks and Wonder being swapped around here, trying to get them a better advantage. Perks trying to be able to push this Urgot in and get pressure on this top tower for them to be able to open up the map. But again, RNG is ahead of the play on this, and they are able to push in G2 down here and get this first tower gold for Uzi. This is huge for him because he's probably going to be able to finish Bork now with this gold. And G2 is basically going to answer right here with a gank from Jankos. And it should result in a kill for Perks. So even though it doesn't actually trade back evenly in terms of the amount of gold, they're still able to find a proactive play. I think Let Me was probably a little bit too far up since he had no vision and probably no knowledge of where Perks and Jankos were going to be coming from together. So they are able to get something back. They're able to get pressure on this top tower, and they're able to get a kill. However, the 600 gold for Uzi already finishes his Bork, and he has another longsword in his inventory plus boots, so he's going to be super far ahead. So yeah, this is a good trade back for G2 in terms of trying to find something to get perks even further ahead than his lane opponent, so that he's strong enough that when team fights come around, they are able to fight. But now we see that they do swap RNG does swap their bot lane to top to get Uzi up there to try to get that outer tower for top lane and then get solo gold for himself. And yeah, Hjarnan is about 30 CS down. He does still have the kills, so it's probably even just in terms of the CS lead. The one kill is probably going to translate close to the CS deficit that he has, probably about like 20 to 25 CS. However, the solo gold that Uzi is getting, plus all the extra pressure on these towers, he's going to get another large amount of gold, 300 for him. And now that they have this outer tower, they're going to look to pressure with Karsa to get the Rift Herald. This is pretty basic stuff when you have a winning bot lane that you want to be able to get as much pressure out on the map as quickly as possible. So G2 should let this go, realistically, because they're in no position to fight. They don't have Hjarnan anywhere nearby. But Jankos is actually going to jump in and try to smite steal it. This ends up losing him his stopwatch, which could have been useful later on, and it also gives Uzi another kill. Or it gives him his first kill, rather. So that's another 300 gold into the pocket of Uzi. And G2 does not do a very good job of keeping Uzi down after that initial first gank that they throw on him, where they end up killing the Leona and don't actually kill him. So right now RNG has about a 1,000-ish gold lead, plus the Herald in their back pocket to throw in mid lane. So now that Uzi is going to recall, probably get some items for Black Cleaver. Yep, there it is. And he's going to go down mid lane with Rift Herald and try to push that tower. So comparatively, Aatrox does not have his first item built. He does not have his Black Cleaver built. He only has components, but he does have tabbies. Gragas has his jungle item plus the Merc Treads built, but he lost his stopwatch in that Rift Herald play, so he's super far behind as well, down almost 40 CS, even a larger CS deficit than the Jhin is currently, but that's just because of how quickly Talia can clear and how much pressure she's had on these Scuttle Crabs going out throughout the game. And we see that Wonder is able to now get a bit of a CS lead over Let Me because of the swap that they've been doing to mid lane so that he can get pressure on the Scion. And Perks is also still significantly ahead of the Scion in terms of just the flat gold lead. So what I actually like to see here is that Xiaohu went for a Righteous Glory first, even though he was against Perks and he probably could have gone Adaptive Helm. He's looking more towards their skirmishing and their team fighting as opposed to just straight trying to outsplit push against this Ryze, because I think Xiaohu actually is a lot more useful on the Scion pick when they're grouped up together than the Ryze would be with the Righteous Glory item. And so looking across the board, Jhin finishes Stormrazor and Swifties, and he's working on a Rapid Fire Cannon right now. They're able to take this mid inner tower with the Rift Herald, and Scion is forced to TP top because of the pressure that Ryze is putting on that outer tower. It's almost dead. So the split push is still pressuring and able to get an advantage in these side lanes, but because Uzi is so far ahead and these tanks of Scion and Urgot are both starting to come online with their one item spikes, it's going to be a lot harder for G2 to be able to play their 1-3-1 style if RNG just decides to actually group up and try to force down a tower. They could realistically actually run down the Jhin, seeing as he's so much further behind than Uzi at the current stage of the game. So it's a lot harder for Jhin to actually kill these frontline tanks. That's another thing I wanted to bring up from draft, is that Jhin into Scion and Urgot and Leona, that's not a very fast killing AD carry in terms of the frontline. So I don't actually like the Jhin pick as much as I feel like I could, because they went more for a laning style against Uzi to try to like neutralize him. Jhin into Lucian, it can be considered a counter pick just from the laning pressure that you bring over the Lucian and the range advantage you have for your trading. But I think something much more utility focused would have actually been better, something that it could actually kill tanks as well, because they already saw the Urgot and the Leona. They actually saw the whole team comp. They saw Leona, Sion, and Urgot. So I think that they could have picked something. They could have picked Sivir if they wanted to. It would have given up a lot more lane pressure than the Jhin would have, realistically. They could have picked something like Varus, which would have been a lot more useful in the team fighting stage. And plus, it also has pretty good range to be able to bully out a Lucian in lane. He is still immobile, though, so it's a little bit harder to actually play into. But those are some things that G2 could work on for their next draft for what they want to do. So here we just see an example of why the Lucian is super strong. He's able to he ults onto Hjarnan in mid lane, gets him down to about a quarter HP, and then walks away. So Hjarnan has to base, and he's super far behind on tempo. So what we just saw in bot lane was the Talia coming down to try to influence the side lane of Wunder being able to split push. And that's actually a huge play that we'll see being punished in the next minute or so of how RNG starts getting a huge advantage in this game. Because they're able to burn Wunder's flash, the next team fight and the next sequence of events that go on right here result in G2 losing their first major fight that actually breaks the game open from the gold lead that's only about 400. So right now, Wunder has no ultimate from that last play down here, so he actually wants to go in. He gets immediately flash plus seismic shoved into RNG, and he instantly dies. So right now, they actually should not. G2 should be backing off, and they should not be fighting this right now. And because of that one play, because they're able to just delete Wunder, who is one of the actual champions that is ahead on G2's comp, they're able to just basically run through this team and get 4 kills onto everybody but the Rakan. So that this is the first major play that breaks this game wide open. Just the earlier play that RNG makes, trying to burn Wunder's ultimate, makes it so that they're able to instantly burst him down, and now they're able to break the inner tower for bot lane, and they're able to break the inhib tower bot lane as well. So they use all of their summoner spells to be able to secure that, but RNG gets a huge advantage now, spiking it from about 300 gold lead to almost a 5k gold lead, just like that. And all of their vision was all of G2's vision was invested in topside for Perkz being able to split push. So here again, we'll see Wunder sees them coming in. They're looking to collapse since all 5 are here and Urgot is basing right now. But again, the damage and the inability to use his ultimate since it's down means that G2 should probably back off here. But they think that they can catch out Uzi because they have the Rakan plus the Gragas engage. They don't actually have enough damage and follow-up because Perkz and Hjarnan are stuck behind the blue buff wall and unable to actually throw down any spells. The Weaver's Wall cuts this already small choke point down to a smaller amount. He barely escapes alive, and they end up losing 4 people for that. So now that gives RNG a huge gold lead and a huge amount of pressure onto the map. It also allows Karsa to finish his Morellonomicon plus Sork boots going on right now. So now he's super strong. The Morellonomicon purchase is good for this for the Aatrox, for the Gragas, for the Rise. A lot of inherent healing just in the items that they choose to produce, plus Aatrox's natural healing on his ability. And so because of that huge fight, now G2 has all the control that they want in the top side, and they can just posture to take Baron at any time they want. Uzi also, I like Uzi's build choice that goes on right now. He buys a QSS as his 3rd item instead of going just straight for the rapid fire cannon. That gives him a lot of safety now from the Rakan engage, and it allows him to play a lot more out in the open in fights. So right now, RNG is doing a really good job of just securing vision and controlling this topside jungle, because they're always going to have the ability to out-team fight G2 at this point, just because of how much further ahead they are and how strong their champions are. So Karsa is able to use Weaver's Wall to force off another inner tower. That's a smart usage of his ultimate. It takes a lot of pressure off and takes any chance of G2 trying to respond to this play out of the picture. Now the Scion has his adaptive helm, so he's pretty much unkillable for this Rise, realistically, in these team fights that are going to happen. The Aatrox has his Youmuu's and his Black Cleaver completed, so he's on his 2-item spike. So he can still technically kill this Lucian just from the amount of damage that Aatrox does do with those items. It's just going to be a lot harder since Uzi is so much further ahead than him. And he's just so much further ahead. The Rise also is on his 2-item spike. Hjarnan is on his 2-item spike. The Gragas is still super far behind. He hasn't been able to finish his Knight's Vow yet. And he probably will after this Raptor camp. But again, it's just the pacing of the items is much more behind on G2. So even if they are looking to fight, they need to be able to pick somebody off quickly and be able to stall out this potential Baron that RNG wants to force. Because right now, because of how much pressure RNG just has on this top side and how much vision they're going to try to invest in the next 5 minutes to get this Baron, it's super important for G2 to play safe and play smart around the side lanes. And here's another example of G2 being punished on the side lanes because of the weaker bot side of the map. Rise uses his ultimate to go down bot lane to try to get an advantage on Let Me with Aatrox so that they can fight together. But in the end, it actually ends up getting the Scion TP out, and they get punished because the rest of RNG is around mid lane to be able to just roam down bottom. And because the bot lane of G2 is so far behind and Jhin is not a fast Baron taker, there's almost no threat of G2 actually counter Baroning off of that play. So it's a really smart heads-up play by the rest of RNG. G2 only has Wonder and Perks as their 2 strongest players right now, just on the map currently. So attacking those 2 side laners is probably the easiest way for RNG to get another big advantage going into this. So right now, Gragas has his Knight's Vow finished. It should be put onto Hjarnan. And Rakan is working on his 2nd item behind his support Sightstone item upgrade. So he actually went for the full upgrade to get more wards down. I think that's an okay choice just to try to get back vision control. But it does delay his first item by a lot more just because of that. And so Scion is still continuing to stack armor for this Aatrox and this Jhin, even though the Jhin actually doesn't have that much kill power until he gets IE, because the true damage will let him cut through the tanks a little bit better. But I still don't like the Jhin pick as much. So now RNG are just able to walk through. They get Perks' TP out of the side lane by starting this Baron. And they're probably going to disengage and try to fight this team fight now. Ming has to flash out. Hjarnan actually has a really nice sidestep right there on the Scion ultimate. But in this case, it still doesn't matter because RNG is just able to fight them. They're burning a lot of defensive summoners now for G2. This isn't a team fight that RNG has to win. It's more of just a fight to try to gain an advantage and burn some summoners on G2's side. They end up getting both Perks' and Hjarnan's flashes for that. So the 2 carry threats on G2 are now flashless. So this just means that there's even more pressure for them to be able to put into getting more vision on the top side and then forcing another Baron. Because once they have the Baron, the G2's split pushing threat is significantly reduced because they'll always be getting pushed in by their own split pushers of Scion and Urgot. So right now, RNG is going to continue to press their vision into the top side because they want to try to get this Baron and push it out. They're a stronger team in the 5v5 right now. They have about a 5k gold lead. So they're just going to try to flex that onto G2's jungle and keep them out from being able to contest Baron. And the way they contest this, the way they put vision down and deny G2 the ability to even walk in is really good in this case specifically. They have the double mountain from before from their earlier bot lane control. So the the Talia and the Urgot can actually take this down to half health just 2-manning it. And as you can see, there's absolutely no vision for G2. It's already too late. It's about 2k by the time they get the vision plant on it. They are able to trade a bot outer tower for that, but that's really all they can realistically do. G2 just has no ability to actually contest this Baron right now with the situation that they're in, both item-wise and summoner-wise. So Perks has finished his Void Staff, which means that he's trying to cut through this front line as much as possible. Hjarnan is on his 2 pieces of IE, and Wonder is starting his Jarm's Fist for Sterix. I think that at this point, the front line of RNG is just so much stronger. They've got the Stone Plate, Righteous Glory, and Adaptive Helm for Scion, and then the Black Cleaver and the Righteous Glory. And it looks like it's going to be Stone Plate plus more MR for this Urgot to be just able to survive on the front line of Perks throwing down fluxes on him. So right now, since there's an exposed inhibitor in bot lane from that earlier fight for RNG, all they really have to do is just pressure these side lanes with the Scion and then have him start roaming together to try to make a play. And right here, they're going to catch them in a choke point. It looks actually like they get a good engage onto Ming right away, but because Perks doesn't have his flash, he's stuck between the Talia wall and the large piece of terrain right around here. So he actually just gets taken down by the Urgot ultimate like right away. Plus, that was a really good ultimate from Karsa to keep him funneled in and be unable to actually get out. So now they win a small skirmish. They're going 2 for 2. It actually isn't terrible for G2, only because they don't lose more people in that case. But again, they lose their 2 strongest players that have the most gold lead for them right now. And Uzi is still alive in this fight, so he is able to constantly push in and open up another inhibitor in top lane. So right now, there's not actually a lot that G2 can do to come back into this game. All they can do is look for picks with the Rakan ult plus the Gragas ult and hope that they're able to do enough damage. But just looking at the item spike right now for these teams, it doesn't actually look like they're going to be able to come back just based on how strong RNG is in this comp right now. So yeah, Perks gets stuck along the wall right there. Wadid has to get out as well because he's put very low. And now RNG is essentially just going to be looking to constantly pressure these side lanes with Baron and try to get these inhibs down. Realistically, they could probably just dive down mid lane with Leona and a Scion engage and just try to kill the back line. But they're already so far ahead that they can just have the Scion and Urgot walk in front of everybody else and let Uzi take this tower. They're going to take this inhib, and they're going to go for the bot lane inhib afterwards. And now they're just going to try to open up this game even more. Realistically, they probably could just look for a team game-ending fight. And that's probably what's going to end up happening here. So Jankos gets chunked out super hard. Scion ult goes into the back. Wonder is already chunked super low. And at this point, it's just the almost 10k gold lead being flexed by RNG onto G2. There's not a lot that they can realistically do at this point. A lot of the early game and mid game decisions that they made kind of set them up for this end result. So this is how RNG wins game 1. They have strong enough tanks and side laners to be able to be frontlining for Uzi. Uzi gets a huge advantage and able to transition that into the other side, into top lane and then to mid lane. And then after that, RNG just strangleholds G2 with their vision control around Baron. So some things to improve that I would like to see from G2 in this next game would be give more utility to Hjarnan, give him something like Varus, where he's able to still impact team fights even if he's behind. I also want to see better drafting for a more advantageous lane. So that means that I think G2 would want to take blue side and ban out Urgot this time. I think that the Urgot versus Aatrox matchup is not a good enough matchup for Wonder to actually be able to push an advantage. I think that they should be trying to draft 2 extremely hard winning side lanes for G2 and let their bot lane play something more utility focused in order for them to try to get a bigger advantage. Because right now, the best way for G2 to win is to neutralize Uzi's pressure with some kind of utility AD in bot lane, because it seems that he's going to want to be prioritized on the Lucian just to get a huge laning advantage over G2's bot lane. And get Perks and Wonder in a super advantageous 1v1 scenario so that they're able to transition their pressure into the side lanes, and then just let Hjarnan farm mid as they're getting pushed in and look for picks with any utility and CC that they draft as well. So that's the end of game 1. RNG is up 1-0.